The Silent Hunter. The great hall of the Arcadian High Command gleamed with polished obsidian and silver metals unknown to Earth science. Grand Admiral Vexthor stood before the curved holographic display, his four arms folded in various postures denoting both irritation and curiosity. The projection showed what appeared to be a vessel of unknown design, drifting silently at the edge of the Epsilon sector. "What am I looking at, Commander?" Vexthor's voice rumbled through the chamber, causing the gathered officers to stiffen their exoskeletons in automatic respect. Commander Lysera stepped forward, her scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the display. "A vessel of previously undocumented design, Admiral. It appeared without warning at the edge of our territory 3 standard cycles ago." "Appeared? Vessels do not simply appear, Commander." "This one did, sir. Our surveillance network detected no approach, no warp signature, no gravitational distortion. It was simply not there, and then it was." A murmur rippled through the assembled officers. In the 5 millennia of Arcadian dominance, such a technological feat had never been witnessed. The Empire had subjugated over 300 species across 12 galactic arms, and none possessed technology that could evade Arcadian detection systems. Vexthor's secondary eyes narrowed. "Origin? Unknown, though preliminary analysis suggests." Lysera hesitated, her voice dropping. "Earth." The chamber filled with derisive clicks and hisses, the Arcadian equivalent of laughter. Humans were barely considered a spacefaring species. Their primitive propulsion systems and basic weaponry had been catalogued centuries ago and dismissed as no threat to Imperial interests. The humans had been permitted to colonize their immediate star system only because their home planet sat on a resource-poor region of space, deemed unworthy of Imperial harvest. "Impossible," stated Vexthor flatly. "Human technology is centuries behind our simplest transport vessels." "Nevertheless, Admiral, the structural design and material composition match known human architectural principles, though vastly more advanced than anything we've observed from them previously." Vexthor strode around the hologram, studying the sleek, predatory shape of the vessel. Unlike the crystalline spires of Arcadian warships or the biomechanical hulls of their vassal races, this ship had an elegant but unmistakably lethal symmetry. It reminded him of the apex predators from the oceans of the Arcadian homeworld, silent, patient, and perfectly evolved to kill. "Have they responded to communication attempts?" "No, Admiral. We've transmitted standard greeting protocols on all frequencies." The vessel remained silent. "And its weapon systems?" "We detect no active targeting mechanisms, but..." Lysera manipulated the hologram, zooming in on several points along the hull. "These structures appear to be weapon emplacements, though of a design we cannot identify." Vexthor made a dismissive gesture with his lower right arm. "Dispatch the 7th Fleet to intercept. If these humans have somehow managed to advance their technology, they must be reminded of their place in the galactic order." "As you command, Admiral." Captain Elena Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, Earth's first and only Phantom-class warship. Through the viewports, she could see the distant glimmer of stars, knowing that among them, an alien empire that had oppressed countless worlds was about to receive a message they would never forget. "Captain, we're detecting a large fleet approaching our position," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, his fingers dancing across the neural interface panel. "Configuration matches Arcadian military formation patterns." Elena nodded calmly. "Right on schedule." The bridge crew maintained their composure, but the tension was palpable. Humanity had prepared for this moment for decades, ever since they discovered the truth about the Arcadian Empire. While Earth had been allowed to develop in apparent isolation, human long-range probes had witnessed the brutality of Arcadian rule on other worlds. Whole civilizations enslaved, planets stripped of resources, species driven to extinction when they no longer served Imperial purposes. "Comms Officer Chen, are we receiving any transmissions?" "Yes, Captain." Standard Arcadian Imperial greeting, followed by a demand for identification and purpose. "Ignore it. Alina ordered. Let them come to us. The Nemesis was the culmination of humanity's greatest scientific achievement, a vessel that existed partially in phase-shifted space, making it nearly undetectable until it chose to be seen. Its hull was composed of quantum-locked carbon lattices that could absorb or deflect energy without generating heat signatures. Its propulsion system utilized dark energy manipulation instead of conventional drives, allowing it to move without disturbing the surrounding spacetime. None of this technology should have been possible for humans, according to the Arcadian assessments. That was precisely why it had worked. Fleet approaching visual range, Captain, reported the tactical officer. 7 capital ships, 23 support vessels. Alina allowed herself a small smile. Impressive. They must be concerned. They're scanning us, Captain, attempting to penetrate our defensive systems. Let them try, Alina replied. Weapons status. Graviton lance at full capacity. Quantum disruptors charged and ready. Alina took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change the course of galactic history. Engage visibility protocols. Let them see exactly what they're dealing with. On the bridge of the Arcadian flagship Indomitable, Fleet Commander Dresvan watched in growing concern as the mysterious vessel suddenly transformed before their sensors. What had appeared to be a small, unremarkable craft suddenly expanded, its hull shifting and reorganizing like liquid metal solidifying into new forms. Where there had been a vessel barely the size of an Arcadian scout ship, now floated a massive warship that rivaled the Indomitable itself. Impossible, Dresvan snarled. Recalibrate the sensors. Sensors functioning correctly, Commander, responded his science officer, voice trembling. The vessel has changed. No ship can alter its physical structure instantaneously. But the evidence floated before them, undeniable. The human vessel had not only masked its true size, but appeared to possess technology that defied Arcadian understanding of physics. Commence scanning procedures, Dresvan ordered. I want to know everything about. Commander. The weapons officer's voice was sharp with alarm. The human vessel is generating an unknown energy field. Before Dresvan could respond, a brilliant pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the human ship, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. As it passed through the Arcadian vessels, every system shut down simultaneously. Propulsion, weapons, life support, communications, all dead in an instant. Only emergency power remained, leaving the mighty 7th Fleet drifting helplessly in space. In the sudden darkness of the Indomitable's bridge, illuminated only by the red glow of emergency lighting, Dresvan felt something he had never experienced in centuries of Imperial service: fear. Back on the Nemesis, Alina watched the disabled Arcadian fleet with grim satisfaction. The electromagnetic pulse had been precisely calibrated to target Arcadian technology without causing physical harm to the crew. This wasn't about destruction, it was about sending a message. Comms are online, Captain, reported Officer Chen. We're being hailed by the Arcadian flagship. On screen, Alina ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Fleet Commander Dresvan. His 4 arms were braced against his command console, and his normally immaculate uniform was disheveled. Behind him, Arcadian officers scrambled to restore systems. This is an act of war, Dresvan growled, mandibles clicking in fury. The Arcadian Empire will reduce your homeworld to ash for this treachery. Alina rose from her captain's chair, standing tall. This is Captain Alina Torres of the United Earth ship Nemesis. Your empire has subjugated countless worlds, enslaved innumerable beings, and committed atrocities beyond measure. Your assessment of human capabilities was flawed, Commander. Catastrophically so. You are nothing. A primitive species barely worth cataloging. Alina's expression hardened. That primitive species just disabled your entire fleet without firing a single conventional weapon. And this ship, it's just the first of many. This was a bluff. The Nemesis was unique, the only vessel of its kind that Earth had managed to construct. But the Arcadians didn't know that. "I am here to deliver terms," Elena continued. "The Arcadian Empire will immediately withdraw from the territories of all subjugated worlds. You will dismantle your military outposts along the Perseus Arm and cease all harvesting operations in living systems." Dresvan's laugh was cold. "You think one ship can dictate terms to an empire that spans half the galaxy? When our Grand Fleet arrives—" "Your Grand Fleet will never arrive, Commander." Elena nodded to her tactical officer, who transmitted a data packet to the disabled flagship. "These are coordinates where Arcadian military installations existed until approximately 1 hour ago. I suggest you verify their current status with your high command, if you can reach them." Elena knew the images would be devastating. Prior to the Nemesis revealing itself, Earth had deployed 37 smaller vessels, using the same phase-shifting technology. Their targets had been carefully selected, uninhabited military installations that represented the backbone of Arcadian power in this sector. Dresvan's eyes widened as he viewed the data. The stunned silence that followed told Elena everything. "This is your only warning," she stated firmly. "The next demonstration will not be against empty installations." With that, she signaled for the communication to be cut. The view screen returned to showing the drifting Arcadian fleet. "Restoration pulse," Elena ordered. "Let's give them back just enough power to limp home and deliver our message." A gentler wave of energy washed over the Arcadian vessels, reactivating their basic systems. "Set course for the Procyon system," Elena ordered. "Phase shift drives at full capacity." As the Nemesis prepared to depart, leaving the humbled Arcadian fleet behind, Lieutenant Commander Jackson approached his captain. "Do you think they'll comply with our demands?" he asked quietly. Elena watched as the stars began to blur around them as the phase shift drive engaged. "No," she answered honestly. "But after today, they'll never underestimate humanity again. And that's exactly what we needed." The Nemesis vanished from normal space, leaving no trace of its passage. A ghost ship that had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The fall of arrogance. The Imperial Palace on Arcadia Prime had stood for 10,000 years, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin suns that bathed the planet in perpetual daylight. Within the Grand Strategy Chamber, a storm was brewing. Unacceptable. Emperor Zexathar's voice boomed across the chamber, causing the assembled high commanders to bow even lower. How could one vessel, one human vessel, disable an entire fleet? Grand Admiral Vexthor stood rigid, all 4 of his arms held stiffly at his sides in the posture of formal apology. "The technology they deployed was beyond our understanding, Your Luminance. Our scientists are still analyzing the data, but preliminary findings suggest the humans have somehow developed methods to manipulate the quantum substrate of spacetime itself." "Impossible," hissed the Emperor. "We have monitored their development for centuries. They were barely achieving rudimentary spaceflight when last assessed." "A deliberate deception, it would seem," replied Vexthor. "Intelligence now indicates the humans have been aware of our surveillance for decades. They presented a false image of technological stagnation while developing their capabilities in secret." The Emperor's upper eye ridges contracted in fury. "And the missing outposts." A holographic display activated at the center of the chamber, showing the smoldering ruins of what had once been the impregnable fortress of Kilaris Station, the linchpin of Arcadian military power in the Perseus Arm. Similar images followed. Defense platforms, shipyards, and monitoring stations, all reduced to debris fields. 37 installations, reported the intelligence director, her voice trembling slightly. All struck simultaneously, all destroyed without warning. No survivors. No distress signals. The humans claimed to have more ships like the one that confronted the 7th Fleet. Vexthor added, "Given what we have witnessed, we must consider this claim credible." Emperor Zexathar rose from his throne, his massive form casting long shadows across the chamber floor. "I will not be dictated to by primitives. Deploy the Grand Fleet. I want Earth reduced to molten slag. The military commanders exchanged uneasy glances. Your Luminance, Vexthor began carefully, perhaps a more measured approach. Are you counseling restraint, Admiral? The Emperor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. After this humiliation, I counsel victory, Your Luminance. If the humans can neutralize our conventional forces so easily, direct confrontation may not be wise. We need time to develop countermeasures. The Emperor sank back into his throne, six-fingered hands gripping the armrests so tightly that the metal groaned under the pressure. You have 3 cycles, Admiral. 3 cycles to find a way to destroy these humans. After that, I will leave the Grand Fleet myself. In the bowels of the Arcadian Military Research Complex on Deimos Station, Dr. Nari Patel worked methodically, her movements deliberate and unhurried despite the armed guards watching her every move. As the only human ever invited to work within an Arcadian facility, she had grown accustomed to their suspicion. What her Arcadian superiors didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Nari had been placed here deliberately, a sleeper agent inserted years before the Nemesis project had even been conceived. Dr. Patel called senior researcher Kexvin, approaching her workstation. Your assessment of this human vessel's capabilities is required. Nari accepted the data crystal he offered, plugging it into her specialized terminal. Images of the Nemesis filled her screen, along with sensor readings from the confrontation with the 7th Fleet. Remarkable, she murmured, feigning surprise while carefully analyzing what information the Arcadians had actually managed to gather. Not much, she noted with satisfaction. The Nemesis defenses had held. Can such technology be countered? Kexvin demanded. Nari hesitated, appearing to consider the question deeply. Theoretically, yes, but it would require a fundamental reassessment of Arcadian approach to quantum mechanics. Your current models are insufficient. Kexvin's secondary eyes narrowed with suspicion. You suggest Arcadian science is primitive. Not primitive, Nari corrected smoothly. Simply different. Human quantum theory developed along alternative paths. We focused on quantum entanglement and phase state manipulation, while your civilization explored quantum compression and energy extraction. She turned back to the screen, pointing to the blurry image of the Nemesis. This ship exists partially outside normal spacetime. That's why your sensors couldn't detect it until it chose to be seen. Impossible. Kexvin snapped, the standard Arcadian response to any challenge to their technological superiority. Nari shrugged, a human gesture that always irritated the Arcadians. Nevertheless, it's the truth. I can help you develop countermeasures, but it will take time. And time was exactly what Earth needed. On the Nemesis, now stationed in the shadow of Jupiter's moon Europa, Captain Torres received the encrypted transmission from Deimos Station with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 is proceeding as planned, reported Commander Chen. Dr. Patel has successfully fed the Arcadians our disinformation package. They're diverting significant resources to developing countermeasures against technology that doesn't exist. Elena nodded. And the Liberation fleets. Deployed to all primary targets, the former Hydraxian collective is already rising against their Arcadian overseers. Similar uprisings are reported in the Centauri, Procyon, and Sirius systems. The plan had been years in the making, while the Nemesis served as a dramatic distraction, the visible symbol of humanity's technological prowess. The real operation was much more subtle. Earth had spent decades establishing connections with subjugated species throughout Arcadian territory, providing them with the means and coordination to fight back against their oppressors. The Nemesis itself was indeed a technological marvel, but its true power lay in what it represented: hope for the oppressed and fear for the oppressors. And our allies within the Empire? Elena asked. Growing by the hour, Chen replied with a smile. The Arcadian merchant guilds have begun questioning the military's ability to protect trade routes. 3 client species have already declared independence, and the Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss the human situation. Elena's expression remained serious. The Emperor has taken the bait then. Just as we predicted. Our intelligence indicates he's preparing the Grand Fleet for a direct assault on Earth. Exactly what we wanted him to do. Elena rose from her chair, moving to the viewport to gaze at the gas giant beyond. Sometimes I wonder if we're too clever for our own good, Commander. Manipulating an empire that's ruled the stars for millennia is a dangerous game. With respect, Captain, they left us no choice. When we discovered what they were doing to those worlds. Elena's eyes hardened as she remembered the horrific images their deep space probes had captured. Entire species enslaved, planets stripped of resources, civilizations systematically dismantled to fuel the endless expansion of the Arcadian Empire. You're right, of course, she acknowledged. Prepare the ship for Phase 3. Emperor Zexethar stood on the command deck of the Sovereign of Stars, the mightiest warship ever constructed by Arcadian shipwrights. Around him, the vessels of the Grand Fleet moved into formation, over 2,000 warships representing the concentrated might of an empire that spanned half the galaxy. Status report, he demanded. All vessels report ready, Your Luminance, replied Fleet Commander Trescan. Jump coordinates for the Sol system are locked. We await only your command. The Emperor stared at the tactical display, where a small blue-green planet was highlighted. Earth, the homeworld of the species that had dared to challenge Arcadian supremacy. In all his centuries of rule, no one had ever struck such a blow against the Empire's pride. These humans believe their technology gives them advantage, he growled. They will learn that the Empire's strength lies not in technology alone, but in overwhelming force. Begin the jump sequence. One by one, the massive vessels of the Grand Fleet vanished into hyperspace, bound for the Sol system. The Emperor watched with satisfaction as the count of ships dropping into hyperspace climbed toward the total. But then, something unexpected happened. The count stalled. Commander, why have we stopped at 1,842 vessels? Where are the rest of my ships? Trescan frantically consulted his displays. Unknown, Your Luminance. We've lost contact with the remaining vessels. Before the Emperor could respond, the ship's alarms blared. Across the command deck, displays flickered and died, only to reactivate showing a single image, a human woman in a captain's uniform. Emperor Zexethar, Captain Elena Torres addressed him directly. I regret to inform you that 312 of your vessels are no longer under your control. Their crews are unharmed but contained. What is this? The Emperor roared. How dare you address me directly? I dare because someone must, Elena replied calmly. Your empire has caused suffering on a scale that defies comprehension. That ends today. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in fury. You think your technological tricks will save you. Even now, my fleet approaches your homeworld. We will reduce it to ash. No, Elena stated simply. You won't, because your fleet is about to learn a truth you've hidden from them for centuries. The Emperor froze, his secondary eyes widening in alarm. Cut this transmission immediately, he ordered. But his commands went unheeded as Elena continued. At this moment, every ship in your fleet is receiving documented evidence of what the imperial family has kept secret, the truth about the Arcadian plague. Throughout the Grand Fleet, on every vessel, displays activated simultaneously to show the same information, classified imperial archives, revealing that the devastating plague that had ravaged Arcadian colonies 3 centuries ago, killing billions, had not been a natural disaster as officially claimed. It had been engineered by the imperial family itself, deployed against colonies that had begun to question imperial rule. The evidence was irrefutable, the Emperor's own ancestors speaking in recorded messages about the necessity of culling the disloyal elements to maintain imperial control. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Elena watched as confusion swept through the Arcadian fleet. Ships began breaking formation, communications channels overflowing with demands for explanation. It's working, Commander Chen reported. The fleet is fragmenting. Multiple vessel commanders are demanding confirmation from the Emperor. Elena nodded grimly. And our infiltration teams. In position on all targeted vessels. The Arcadian resistance members are moving to secure key systems. For decades, Earth had made contact with dissidents within the Empire. Arcadians who had grown disillusioned with imperial rule but lacked the means to take action. They had waited, hidden in the shadows, for exactly this moment. The Emperor is attempting to regain control, reported the communications officer. He's ordering the fleet to ignore the transmission and continue the attack. Elena's expression hardened. Send the activation signal. Throughout the Grand Fleet, sleeper agents, both human and Arcadian, emerged from hiding. Not to attack or destroy, but to reveal even more truths. How the Emperor had executed rivals, suppressed technological advancements that might threaten imperial control, and deliberately kept certain species in technological dark ages to prevent them from becoming threats. On the Sovereign of Stars, Emperor Zexithar watched in mounting horror as his carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Ship after ship broke formation, communication channels filled with demands for explanation, for accountability. "This is treason," he roared. "I will execute every commander who defies me." But his threats fell on increasingly deaf ears. Around him, even his loyal bridge crew began to look at him with new eyes, with doubt and growing anger. "Your Luminance," Fleet Commander Trezcan approached, his posture no longer subservient. "The fleet demands answers." "The fleet does not demand. The fleet obeys." The Emperor's voice shook with fury. "Not anymore," came a new voice, the science director, stepping onto the bridge flanked by security officers, whose weapons were not pointed at her. "The Council of Directors has convened an emergency session. You are relieved of command, effective immediately." The Emperor stood in stunned silence as his own guards moved to surround him. In a matter of hours, millennia of absolute rule had been undone. 3 months later, Captain Elena Torres stood in the Great Hall of the newly formed Galactic Concord. Around her, representatives from hundreds of worlds, former imperial territories, subjugated species, and independent powers alike, had gathered to sign the Articles of Unity. The Arcadian Empire had not been destroyed but transformed. With the imperial family removed from power, the Arcadian people had embraced reform with surprising speed. Their technological prowess and organizational skills, once used for domination, were now being redirected toward reconstruction and cooperation. Captain Torres greeted Nari Patel, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Concord. "Quite a gathering, isn't it?" Elena smiled. "More than we ever hoped for. Is it wrong that part of me still can't believe it worked?" "Not wrong at all. We took an enormous gamble. The truth was that humanity had never possessed a fleet of advanced vessels like the Nemesis. There had only ever been one, a singular achievement representing the absolute limit of Earth's technological capabilities. Everything else had been an elaborate deception, strategic information leaks, carefully staged sightings, and the coordinated actions of resistance movements throughout the Empire. The Nemesis itself was indeed a marvel, but its most potent weapon had never been its advanced drive system or its quantum disruptors. Its true power had been what it represented, the possibility that an empire built on fear and subjugation could be challenged. "And what happens now?" Elena asked, watching as former enemies signed agreements of mutual cooperation and aid. Ambassador Patel gazed around the hall, her expression thoughtful. "Now we build something better. The Arcadians are already sharing technology that was previously restricted to the imperial family. Medical advancements, agricultural techniques, clean energy systems, all the things they hoarded while worlds suffered. And the former emperor, in exile, under guard, but alive. Executing him would have only created a martyr. This way, he lives to see everything he built transformed into something he never imagined possible." As the ceremony concluded, a tall Arcadian approached them, Science Director Kexvin, now serving on the Concord's governing council. "Captain Torres." He greeted her with the new gesture of respect that had replaced the imperial bow. I never properly thanked you. For what, Director? Threatening your empire, disabling your fleet. For showing us a different path, he replied simply. For centuries, we believed domination was the natural order, that superior technology and military might give us the right to rule. You proved that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to reveal truth. Elena nodded slowly. The hardest truths to face are often the ones we hide from ourselves. As she looked out at the assembled representatives of a galaxy in transformation, Elena thought about the Nemesis, now retired to Earth orbit as a monument. A single ship that had never fired a conventional weapon had brought down an empire not through destruction, but by breaking the silence that had allowed tyranny to flourish. Sometimes, she reflected, the deadliest weapon wasn't a warship at all, but the truth it carried.